The top female assassin in the industry is about to become a maid for an ordinary male high school student. Yokoya was home alone, living a listless life, when suddenly a beautiful older woman visited him. She immediately asked if she could work as a maid there. Seduced by her beauty, Yokoya didn't hesitate to let her in. He first inquired about her previous occupation and was shocked to learn that she was an assassin, recommended by her master to be a maid. Alarmed, Yokoya was afraid to hire such a maid and worried about upsetting her, risking his life. He planned to politely refuse her, asking first what connection she had with her master. It turned out they were distant relatives. Yokoya couldn't help but make a sarcastic remark. Noticing that Yuki looked displeased, he quickly changed the subject, asking about her last job. Yuki simply demonstrated her proficiency in a variety of hidden weapons, confirming her status as a top assassin. However, this was irrelevant to Yokoya, a normal high school student with no one to kill. Regretfully, he couldn't employ Yuki. She understood and left with her belongings, while Yokoya felt as if he had narrowly escaped danger. However, he realized she had left something at his place and hurried after her. At that moment, Yuki was feeling lost, unsure of her next steps since she couldn't be a maid for Yokoya as her master had intended. Just then, she heard Yokoya's voice. He was holding a bell, but in his rush, he didn't notice a large truck approaching from the side, nearly sending him to another world. Fortunately, Yuki quickly pushed him out of the way. The intense action left her breathless, marking the first time she had directly saved a life. Her heart couldn't stop racing. Yokoya returned the bell to her, and they said goodbye once more. However, this time, Yokoya felt reluctant to let her go and called out to Yuki, telling her his home needed someone to clean. He hoped she would stay and help. Yuki followed Yokoya back to the large villa, but she was clueless about household chores. She even thought Yokoya meant assassination when he said cleaning. Yokoya quickly showed her around the house, which was cluttered with garbage bags that had been accumulating for a long time. What Yokoya really needed was a housekeeper. Yuki thought she understood him. As long as she could do the housework, she could stay, right? Unfortunately, though she was skilled at killing, she knew nothing about housework and was clumsy at it. Yokoya found her mishaps surprisingly cute. He handed her a towel to wipe down with and then helped her clean. Eventually, they managed to make the house look brand new, although Yuki hadn't been much help. However, her presence motivated Yokoya. By the evening at 7 p.m., after working all day without even lunch, both were hungry. Yuki naturally couldn't cook, so Yokoya suggested she take a bath first. Soaking in the bathtub, Yuki thought of Yokoya's smiling face and felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, Yokoya was somewhat anxious, worried Yuki might come out wearing just a towel, unsure how he'd react. When Yuki appeared, she was fully dressed and helped by slicing cabbage finely with impressive knife skills. Yokoya then served up store-bought fried pork cutlets and instant miso soup. Though all food was the same to Yuki, Yokoya excitedly introduced the cutlets, claiming they would change her perception. They were from a 60-year-old specialty shop, both delicious and affordable, and reportedly a secret favorite of celebrities. However, Yuki remained indifferent, suggesting Yokoya eat it all if he liked it so much. Yokoya couldn't eat alone and split the meal into 2 portions. Then he realized he hadn't asked for the maid's name. Yuki said she had no name, as it changed with the employer's preference. Yokoya, not good at naming, continued to call her Maid. This made Yuki slightly uncomfortable. The two shared the pork cutlet meal, but Yuki failed to meet Yokoya's expectations, still unable to distinguish good from bad tastes as before. However, she felt a warmth she hadn't felt before, both from bathing and eating. While Yuki was bathing, Yokoya had prepared a room for her. In fact, Yuki has a name, her name as an assassin, but for some reason, she didn't want to be called the Cold Woman by Yokoya. Noticing Yuki eating the pork cutlet dry, Yokoya passed her the sauce, and this time Yuki was amazed. Was the pork cutlet sauce really such a delicious thing? In the middle of the night, Yokoya woke up from a nightmare feeling hungry and quietly went to the kitchen to prepare some instant noodles. He heard a noise inside and saw a tall woman in a white dress slowly turning her head. It was Yuki, sneaking some pork cutlet sauce. Relieved, Yokoya made a dish of pork cutlet with sauce for dipping. Yuki ate with great satisfaction and then asked Yokoya if he had a nightmare. She came out of her room because she heard Yokoya moaning. Worried he was being attacked by an assassin, she checked on him and found Yokoya crying and calling out for his mother. Ashamed, Yokoya told her that he too had a dream, dreaming of a giant pork cutlet sauce, but woke up just as he was about to eat it. This was the first time he had such a dream. He usually dreamed of killing or being killed. So when she noticed Yokoya had a nightmare, she wanted to comfort him but didn't know how. Little did she know, for Yokoya, hearing these words from the maid was already very satisfying. He often had nightmares as a child, dreaming his mother was leaving with another child, abandoning him. After such nightmares, he couldn't sleep unless he was lying on his mother's lap. Hearing this, Yuki immediately offered her thigh, but Yokoya was so frightened that he quickly refused. The rejected Yuki was immediately overwhelmed by a sense of loss. Seeing this, Yokoya could only muster the courage to lie down on it, and they both felt warmth. The next morning, Yokoya went downstairs and saw that all the trash had been shredded and bagged. Their life had finally started to settle down. However, when he opened the door, he found a small dog abandoned at the doorstep, along with a letter from its previous owner. It explained that they had bought the dog from a pet store thinking it was a Pomeranian, but as it grew bigger, it became too much to handle and was left at the doorstep of a wealthy household. Yokoya was at a loss for words but couldn't ignore the situation, knowing that such a small dog might not survive if left to roam the streets. Yuki, on the other hand, reflected on her own childhood, recalling that no one had ever spoken such words to her. She believed that with a strong desire to survive, anyone could make it through any situation. This was the instinct of an animal. Being saved out of pity could never truly make one strong. Abandonment could still lead to death. Yuki's thoughts were too philosophical, and Yokoya couldn't quite grasp them. He knew that the reason the maid had saved his life the day before wasn't out of pity. Rather, her body had reacted before her mind had a chance to think, a basic human instinct. Yokoya didn't want to argue with Yuki and went back inside with the dog. Unexpectedly, Yuki was afraid of dogs. Nonetheless, she would hold it if it was an order from her master. Yokoya was concerned about her fear and learned that Yuki's master had once thrown her into a mountain filled with fierce wild dogs for training, which left her traumatized. Feeling sympathetic, Yokoya decided it was best not to have Yuki take care of the dog. However, seeing Yokoya so troubled made Yuki feel lost again. Still, Yokoya resolved to adopt the dog, and Yuki decided to face her fears and held the dog. The dog, held by the beautiful lady, showed a mischievous expression and stayed still. Yet Yuki was still scared of its sharp claws, fierce teeth, and piercing eyes, unaware that to most people, the dog looked just like a fluffy marshmallow. At that moment, the puppy suddenly nibbled on Yuki's finger, almost causing her to faint. Yokoya quickly took the puppy, and it switched to another finger to nibble on. It wasn't really biting hard, just itching its teeth. So, Yokoya took the puppy and Yuki to the pet hospital to get the dog a checkup and asked Yuki to help pick out some pet supplies. After the checkup, they could go back home with a leash. Yokoya appreciated Yuki's help, and Yuki found herself touched by Yokoya's kindness. It was the first time someone like him had appeared in her life, making her acutely aware of the distance between them. Until now, Yuki, who had only known how to kill, had learned so much in just a few days from Yokoya. Even if she failed the tasks assigned, Yokoya would not blame her. This left Yuki, who had always been treated like a pawn, feeling lost. She wished she could have met someone like Yokoya earlier in life, to know that the world could be warm from a young age. These confessions made Yokoya feel uneasy, and he could tell that Yuki was considering giving up her previous line of work to become an ordinary girl, a thought she had never entertained, or perhaps dared not entertain before. Her world had been filled with killing and being killed, but she realized she could step out of that world and walk into the sunlight. Could she also live in this dazzling warm world? Moved, Yokoya shared his feelings as well. Initially, when Yuki arrived at his home, he was scared because he had never been close to someone from her background. However, after a few days together, he realized that the maid was actually a wonderful person. This remark brought back long-forgotten memories for Yuki, prompting her to eagerly ask how she could become ordinary. Yokoya told her to accept failure, because failure is normal here, and it's also normal not to get things right the first time. So after returning home, Yuki tried to normally slice cabbage with a kitchen knife. Suddenly, the puppy sprang up, startling Yuki into a defensive stance. But the puppy was just hungry. Yuki fed it, and while she couldn't resist petting the puppy's head, Yokoya walked in. He pinched the puppy's belly and remarked how it felt like mochi, suggesting they name it Fried Mochi. Yuki thought it was a great name. Yokoya complimented Yuki on her cabbage slicing skills, noting she was getting better at her maid duties. This encouragement made Yuki happy, and she bravely took on the job of caring for the puppy, even though she hadn't completely overcome her fear, but she wanted to believe what Yokoya said. Yokoya, smiling, expressed his trust in Yuki, noting how well-behaved the puppy was when its belly was rubbed, showing a content face, unlike the fierce dogs of the wild. That evening, they made okonomiyaki with pork cutlet sauce. Yuki, still hungry after one plate, asked for another, which Yokoya happily made. reassuring her that wanting more was perfectly normal and she could make more whimsical requests. Yuki then really did ask for something. She wanted Yokoya to give her a name, just like fried mochi. While preparing another okonomiyaki, Yokoya asked about her birthday, which Yuki recalled was in a very cold winter, likely snowy. Yokoya suggested the name Snow Miss, as he loves snow for its beauty and warmth. He explained how snow protects the soil and seeds beneath from freezing in winter, allowing them to sprout anew in spring. From this perspective, snow was keeping them warm. Every word Yokoya spoke resonated deeply with Yuki. The codename Snow no longer haunted her dreams, but became a warm name, all thanks to Yokoya. So, she wanted to continue living with Yokoya. With that thought, she smiled a genuine, heartfelt smile. Yokoya wanted a makeover during the summer vacation, so he asked Yuki to pierce his ears. Yuki aimed the piercing gun at Yokoya's earlobe but ultimately couldn't go through with it. She even mistakenly thought that Yokoya was punishing her. Why else would she pierce her master's ear? Yokoya was speechless and reminded her, "Wasn't your previous job piercing people?" Just then, the doorbell rang. A little girl eagerly shouted for her brother to show her the dog, but was surprised to see a beautiful young woman open the door. Rikoi, Yokoya's sister, first played roughly with the dog and then turned her attention to Yuki, wondering when such a beautiful person had arrived and why her brother hadn't told her. Yokoya explained it was because he was worried their mother would be concerned. Rikoi asked about their father's opinion, who didn't mind his son hiring a maid and thought Yuki was just an ordinary maid since he hadn't visited. Yuki seemed puzzled about their relationship. Staring at Rikoi made her shy. After all, the older sister was too beautiful. Once calm, Rikoi introduced herself and complimented Yuki's name, surprised to learn Yokoya had chosen it. Yuki openly admitted she used to be an assassin. Rikoi wasn't scared, but thought Yuki was incredibly cool and even asked for an autograph on the spot. Yuki was unaccustomed to such treatment and signed her name, though it looked a bit different than expected since she was more skilled in verbal communication, fluent in 12 languages necessary for her global work. She had never practiced calligraphy for work. Rikoi didn't mind and praised Yuki's signature as cute, deciding to make Observing the Beautiful Maid her summer research project, eager to see Yuki's assassin side. In the backyard, Yuki had Rikoi hold an apple on her head and did a backflip, throwing a knife that hit the mark. Excited, Rikoi asked where the knife came from. In front of Yokoya, Yuki lifted her skirt, revealing that she usually carried 16 knives, but now only 5 on Yokoya's orders. Rikoi found the bell on Yuki's head cute, but wondered if it hindered her during assassinations. Yuki honestly replied that by the time the sound reached the target, he would already be taken care of. Impressed, Rikoi wanted to repeat that cool statement but got hungry. Yuki went to cook for them, showing off her cabbage slicing skills, but that was the extent of her cooking ability. Eventually, Yokoya took them to a family restaurant where they noticed a poster for a summer festival. Interested, Rikoi wanted to check it out. Yokoya also told Yuki about a stall selling sauce-covered rice crackers at the festival, which she couldn't resist. The three then headed out to enjoy the festival together. First, they arrived at the archery range. Rikoi missed her first shot, and surprisingly, Yuki missed as well. After all, she specialized in throwing weapons, not shooting. However, during the goldfish scooping game, Yuki really showed her skills and even taught Rikoi hands-on. The owner thought they were sisters and complimented Yuki for being a kind and caring older sister. Yuki remained silent until Yokoya bought her sauce-covered rice crackers. They were as delicious as ever, and Yuki stuffed them into her mouth like a little hamster. Seeing her joy, the stall owner gave her 2 bottles of sauce for free. At that moment, Rikoi went out to buy drinks. To ensure his sister wouldn't lose them upon returning, Yokoya stayed nearby with Yuki. This was Yuki's first time truly participating in a festival. Previously, she had only attended such events for assassinations and had no interest in the fireworks or scenery. Noticing Yuki drifting into her own world, Yokoya didn't disturb her. Just then, fireworks burst beautifully in the night sky. Rikoi returned at that moment, handed a drink to Yuki, and sat between them to enjoy the fireworks. After the show, everyone returned home satisfied. Unexpectedly, on their way back, they encountered a biker gang. The bikers snatched a girl's bag and headed straight towards them. Yuki dropped her sauce and scooped up Rikoi, dodging to the side. This was the first time Rikoi had been carried princess-style by someone other than her father. Unfortunately, The sauce from the owner was wasted, which made Yokoya increasingly angry. He thought such people deserved divine retribution. Yuki, thinking it was an order from her master, chased after them by running across rooftops. Rikoi was thrilled and planned to include this scene of Yuki beating up the bad guys in her observation diary. Yuki caught up with the motorcycle thieves. Yokoya and Rikoi took a shortcut. Yuki landed from above, first throwing 2 daggers to block the path, then landed in front of the thief, knife in hand, approaching step by step. Just as she was about to deal with him, Yokoya shouted for her not to kill him. Fortunately, Yuki had never intended to kill, just to teach him a lesson. So the 3 went back to buy more sauce-covered rice crackers, and then took Rikoi home. Rikoi felt her observation diary would be very popular. Yuki didn't quite understand these things as she had never attended school. After hearing Rikoi's explanation, she felt a sense of longing. Yokoya, hearing Yuki's soft murmurs, also became curious about how old Yuki was this year. However, he encouraged her to try school and make some friends. As summer vacation ended, Yokoya started the new school term. His close friend eagerly shared gossip about a beautiful maid seen around town. Yokoya pretended to know nothing about it. Another classmate mentioned seeing her in the library. Then, at the start of the class, the teacher announced a new transfer student was joining their class. Yokoya looked up and saw it was their maid,